All right. So one of these that I wanted to kind of cover one of my older topics, but one, since I've changed over to YouTube, feels like it needs a reiteration. And it's this idea of reality kind of as a dream, or as it is a dream. But the reason why is because you can kind of look at it and step back and say, what about reality is like a dream? And when you really do look at it, you notice that actually a lot of reality is like a dream. I mean, all the symbolism, all the stuff that you basically think about as being important in dreams actually does show up in our reality. It's just we have kind of backed into reasonings for a lot of it. It's kind of this odd idea of we think that basically everything started from base principles and worked up, and we're only discovering it, and basically finding out about all this kind of unknown information about life. But, I mean, another way to look at it could be that, in fact, actually, our belief creates things, or the oscillation of our belief, and there's kind of like a fringe around it. And then we kind of discover things in that fringe around it. But fundamentally, a lot of what gives those things their power, their force, is really actually our belief. It's this idea that if we stopped actually paying attention to things like the kilogram, for example, if we didn't keep good references on them, if we kind of let a lot of that stuff slide and go, then would we actually have as tight a grasp on our ideas of mass? Would mass actually stay as massive as it was? Would our references be able to actually at some level, we wouldn't have a good way to reference to what a kilogram was, but then another way to think about it would be that a kilogram starts to float. And it's the same kind of idea, like aspirin. Aspirin was one of these drugs that was discovered a long time ago, and that basically, well, not a long time ago, but as far as drug history goes, it was. And then yet, really, it is a drug that basically we kind of found, and we're like, oh, it has these benefits. And then people associate all the goodness of aspirin. They're like, aspirin is a wonder drug. Aspirin is magical. And then basically we start finding out all these other things about aspirin. We're like, oh, wow, it really is. It has all these other beneficial properties. But the thing is that because all these people basically are believing that aspirin is actually super beneficial and kind of a wonder drug, and then basically we're kind of backing into reasonings for why it is a wonder drug. I mean, you can think about a lot of kind of physics and a lot of the observational universe that way. That really it's like we're seeing a dream, we're seeing things around us kind of form and shape, and then it's like as we investigate, then reality kind of builds pattern and builds background support structure for where it is that we're actually kind of going and being like, okay, well, why is that way? And it's like a child learning about life, and so life basically just, kind of fills in the gaps wherever the child happens to be looking at life. And so you can look and see, like, with this dream structure, for example, in dreams, one of the common things is basically don't take in anything of the dream or you'll get stuck. But, then you can look at, like, our morals, and our morals are set up almost exactly on that structure. I mean, all the things that basically we would indicate as being bad are basically, of take in of the world, take in the material universe, and then basically, give away all the kind of spiritual aspect of it. Greed, it's all basically buying into the materialism, that there even is a materialism really to own, to have, that there is real estate, this kind of stuff like pride, that you care what other things in the dream even care about you, that at some level their view of you matters. You've bought into the dream at that point. You're taking in their opinion, and because of that, then you're getting stuck. Food, gluttony, same way. You're taking in something of the dream that you just really almost couldn't go without, and then because of that tie that you've basically formed to the dream, then in some sense you can't actually let go of the dream. It binds you to the dream. Your basically want of that thing basically binds you to the dream. I mean, lust is a very similar kind of thing. It's one of the most extreme versions of that. I mean, actually, maybe breathing, water, food, and then probably like lust are probably like some of like the main ones that are like really strong binds and hearts for people to let go of. I mean, because they're some of our most fundamental ideas of what it means to be alive. I I mean, it's like what I talked about before with like this early number theory kind of stuff. I mean, the very first stuff is 1. You exist in the world. You're taking in sensation and you're putting out garbage. Then basically, like number 2 is, you're coupling with other stuff in reality and kind of like interacting with it, and basically, it and you are giving each other information and signals and feedback, and the most extreme version of that is, something very like you that basically you're kind of oscillating with, but, that you're interested in or attracted to, not like repelled by, I guess. But actually, and some of that too is, it's that repulsion, it's that kind of bouncing of like, male, male, female, female kind of thing, where it's like they kind of naturally contest a bit, because in some way it's kind of like polar charges, oscillating and bouncing around, and, too much plus doesn't want to be near a bunch of other plus, and too much negative doesn't want to be near a bunch of other negative. I mean, same kind of basic idea. But anyways, at some basic level, though, it still all basically boils down to it's kind of like a dream. Like I talked about color theory, that a lot of life tends to boil down to basically kind of colors and expressions of things in their ideals as colors. These fiery-haired women who often tend to be very kind of passionate and fiery. I mean, these ideas that basically like foods that are spicy also tend to be that same kind of thing, and we associate spicy with that same kind of deal. Spicy people and stuff, all this kind of stuff. And similarly, like all the ideas of blue and sadness and coldness and all this kind of stuff that goes along with it. But then you look at life, and most of the things that are like that kind of get expressed that way. Minty things often tend to be these kind of greens and blues. Like the dark night sky, all this kind of stuff basically follows out with our ideas of color. We associate green with life, but then all the things that kind of are life-giving often tend to also be green. And also tend to be of the senses and experience and all that kind of thing. It's strange, but at the same point, it's like when you actually step back and maybe free your mind, as it were, from Matrix days, you really do kind of notice it. You notice that actually there's a lot of symbolism in the stuff that happens around you. That actually a lot of the same patterns kind of repeat over and over, like life is basically trying to be like, hey, pay attention, wake up, I'm trying to tell you something. You start to see a lot of similar experiences. It's a lot of similar kind of like sub-stories that basically repeat over and over in your movies, in your cinema, in your TV, in the life that's going on around you, in your friend circles and things like that. Kind of how that all reverberates basically, and you kind of keep seeing those same echoes basically, kind of going over and over and over, back and forth. I know, it's odd, but it's an interesting thing to try, to kind of step back and be like, do the types of birds that are flocking around my house or my area basically mean something? Do the sky patterns and things like that actually matter in the cloudy days versus not cloudy days? Are there associations that go beyond kind of like the material, superficial world that extend more into the meaning of it all? Because it's like at one level you can delve down and you can say like, all right, there is what I see. There is the superficial exterior world. Then there is kind of like the micrograin structure of that. What are all the details that had to go on to basically to have that thing occur and have that point in space actually, kind of sync up. Sure. But then there's kind of the greater side of it, which we often forget, which is more of the like, what was the contextual meaning of that? What was the relationship of that to my life? Why did that matter? What was those people having that conversation nearby? Was there actually some echo of that basically that is like almost an expression of what's going on within me that is basically kind of like being influenced or coming out in the things that people are talking about around me? It's a strange idea, but it's one that when you kind of look at it, you notice it a heck of a lot more. Anyhow, all for that one.